Hey, Mike here. So in the last video we saw Jacob make some very poor decisions involving women in his life. So let's jump right back in. After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and my children whom I have acquired by working for you. And then I will depart, for you know how hard I've worked for you." But Laban said to him, "I have found favor in your sight. Please stay here, for I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me on account of you." He added, "Just name your wages. I'll pay you whatever you want." But wouldn't you like to hear that from your employer? "I will pay you whatever you want if you stay." "You know how I have worked for you," Jacob replied, "and how well your livestock have fared under my care. Indeed, you had little before I arrived, but now your possessions have increased many times over. The Lord has blessed you wherever I worked. But now, how long must it be before I do something for my own family, too?" That's a very valid concern for anyone who has worked long hours and given a company or other person years of work. So Laban asked, "What should I give you?" "You don't need to give me a thing," Jacob replied. "But if you agree to this one condition, I will continue to care for your flocks and protect them. Let me walk among all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every speckled or spotted goat. These animals will be my wages. My integrity will testify for me later on, when you have come to verify that I have taken only the wages we agreed on. If I have in my possession any goat that is not speckled or spotted, or any sheep that is not dark-colored, it will be considered stolen." "Agreed," said Laban. "It will be as you say. That sounds like a fair deal. But this leaves a lot up to chance, but also a lot up to God." So that day Laban removed the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled or spotted, all that had any white on them, and all that had dark-colored limbs, and put them into the care of his sons. Then he separated them from Jacob by a 3-day journey, while Jacob was taking care of the rest of Laban's flocks. So far so good. They've agreed to the wages, and both people are honoring their agreement. Now this happens. But Jacob took freshly cut branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees, and made white streaks by peeling them, making the white inner wood of the branches visible. Then he set up and peeled branches in all the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink. He set up the branches in front of the flocks when they were in heat and came to drink. Then the sheep mated in front of the branches, and they gave birth to young that were streaked, speckled, or spotted. Now this was an act of faith to receive a miracle, or was it some sort of chemistry trick? Do these plants make livestock somehow marked or streaked? Honestly, I don't know. If this is chemistry or biohacking, it feels a little dishonest. If you know anything about plants and animals, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Jacob removed these lambs, but made the rest of the flock face the streaked and completely dark-colored animals in Laban's flock. So he made separate flocks for himself and did not mix them with Laban's flocks. When the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would set the branches up in the troughs in front of the flock so that they would mate near the branches. And if the animals were weaker, Jacob did not set the branches up there. So these weaker animals ended up belonging to Laban, and the stronger animals to Jacob. Yeah, to me this seems dishonest and unethical, but again, that's what Laban did too. In this way, Jacob became extremely prosperous. He owned large flocks, male and female servants, camels, and donkeys. This guy's accumulating a lot of wealth very quickly. And if you think it's weird that they specify male and female servants, keep in mind waiters and waitresses. It's kind of the same concept here. And Jacob heard that Laban's son was complaining. Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father. He has gotten rich at our father's expense, and when Jacob saw the look on Laban's face, he could tell his attitude toward him has changed. I could see that. After all, Jacob has essentially stolen his brother's birthright and now has taken most of Laban's livestock. He is moving up in the world, but at a cost to those around him. If you're wondering how much he accumulates, you know the nation this man founded. You just might not know it by the name Jacob, but we'll get to that later. The Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent a message to Rachel and Leah to come to the field where his flocks were. And he said to them, "I can tell that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for many years for your father as hard as I could, but your father has humiliated me and changed my wages 10 times. God has not permitted him to do me any harm. If he said, 'The speckled animals will be your wage,' the entire flock gave birth to speckled offspring. But if he said, 'The streaked animals will be your wage,' the entire flock gave streaked offspring. In this way, God has snatched away your father's livestock and given them to me." Okay, this seems to answer my question. The speckling of livestock was God's doing, and the herbs were just a show of faith for Jacob. Additionally, Jacob is right. Laban was horrible to work for. Once during breeding season, I saw in a dream that the male goats were mating with the flock were the streaked and speckled and spotted. In the dream, the angel of God said to me, "Jacob." "Here I am," I replied. Then he said, Observe that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have observed all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you were anointed to the sacred stone and made a vow to me. Now leave this land immediately and return to your native land." Yeah, given Laban's history and the fact that he feels he was wronged by Jacob, I would say it's not a good idea to get to stay there. It's a good idea to leave. Only God knew for sure what was in Laban's heart, but that area does not feel safe. Then Rachel and Leah replied to him, "Do we still have any portion of inheritance in our father's house? Hasn't he treated us like foreigners? He has not only sold us, but has completely wasted the money paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God snatched away from our father belongs to us and our children. So now, do everything God has told you." Jacob immediately put his children and wives on the camels and took away all the livestock that he had acquired in Paddan Aram and the movable property that he had accumulated. Then he set out toward the land of Canaan to return to his father Isaac. Most people recognize that Laban did Jacob wrong. But yeah, he treated his daughters the same, and apparently was not wise in other aspects of his life either. But what is kind of cool, if you look at it from the family line of Laban, God ensured that that family wealth stayed in that family line through Jacob. Jacob came and took the daughters away from the father and took away all the wealth from the family. But if you look at it through the line of the daughters, the family wealth stayed within the family. While Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. Jacob also deceived Laban in Aramine by not telling him that he was leaving. Although I can't say I blame him on this one. He just had to bug out. He left with all that he owned, and he quickly crossed the Euphrates River and headed for the hill country of Gilead. 3 days later, Laban discovered that Jacob had left. He took his relatives with him and pursued Jacob for 7 days. He caught up to him in the hill country of Gilead, but God said to Laban in Aram in a dream at night and warned him, "Be careful that you neither bless nor curse Jacob." Keep in mind that God has big plans for Jacob. You'll see that. His descendants grow into something that you know of today, that is still a major player on the world stage. You can probably figure out who Jacob is, but I will tell you that Jacob does change his name after having a little bit of a struggle with God. Anyway, Laban overtook Jacob, and when Jacob pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead, Laban and his relatives came up to the camp too. "What have you done?" Laban demanded of Jacob. "You've deceived me and carried away my daughters as if they were captives of war. Why did you run away secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so that I could send you off with a celebration, complete with a signing, singing, tambourines, and harps? You didn't even allow me to kiss my daughters and grandchildren goodbye. You have acted foolishly." Now, I can see why he would feel that way. Imagine if your son-in-law took your grandkids and daughters off without notice, and you might never see them again. That would be rough. "I had the power to do you harm, but the God of your father told me last night, 'Be careful that you neither bless nor curse Jacob.' Now I understand that you've gone away because you longed desperately for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" I always find it odd that people obey God in some direct commands, yet worship other gods and idols as well. He continues, "I left secretly because I was afraid." Jacob said to Laban, "I thought you might take your daughters away from me by force. Whomever has taken your household gods will be put to death." That seems a bit drastic, but considering he doesn't know who did it, he continues, "In the presence of our relatives, identify whatever's yours." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them, so Laban entered Jacob's tent, and Leah's tent, and the tent of the 2 female servants, and did not find any gods. Then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the idols and put them inside her camel saddle and sat on them. Laban searched the whole tent but did not find them. How is she doing this? How is she going to get out of this one? Rachel said to her father, "Do not be angry, my lord. I cannot stand up in your presence because I'm having my period." So he searched thoroughly but did not find the idols. Well, that'll do. They didn't have pads or tampons back then. They literally just sat on an old rag. Without the knowledge of her stealing them, this makes Laban look bad, and Jacob goes off. Jacob became angry and argued with Laban. "What did I do wrong?" he demanded of Laban. "What sin of mine prompted you to chase after me in hot pursuit? When you searched through all my goods, did you find anything that belonged to you? Set it here before your relatives and mine, and let them settle the dispute between all of us. I have been with you for the past 20 years. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams of your flocks. Animals torn by wild beasts were never brought to you. I always absorbed the loss myself. You always made me pay for every missing animal, whether it was taken by day or night. I was consumed by scorching heat during the day and piercing cold at night. And I went without sleep. This was my lot for 20 years in your house. I worked like a slave for you. 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks. But you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the one whom Isaac fears, had not been with me, you would certainly have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw how I was oppressed and how hard I worked, and he rebuked you last night. All very good points. Laban realizes that Jacob is right. Laban replied to Jacob, "These women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. All that you see belongs to me. But how can I harm these daughters of mine today, or the children whom I have given birth? So now come, let's make a formal agreement, you and I. It will be proof that we have made peace." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a memorial pillar. He then said to his relatives, "Gather stones." So they brought stones and put them in a pile. They ate there by the pile of stones. Laban called it, looks like Yeager Sahedra. I cannot pronounce that word. Anyway, Jacob called it Gilead. Let's go with that one. That name is an Aramaic word, which just means witness pile. It's always good when people can work out their differences. Laban said, "This pile of stones is our witness of our agreement today. That is why it is called Gilead." Again, that is the meaning of the word. In general, when scriptures use an archaic word and say it was called this because of that, you can figure out what the word means. So when it says, "This pile of stones is our witness of our agreement today," that's why it's called Gilead. You know Gilead means a pile of stones that witnesses something. It was also called Mizpah because he said, "May the Lord watch between us when we are out of one sight of one another. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one else is with us, realize that God will witness your actions." And that's an important thing to consider. No matter where you go or who you hide from, God sees it. "Here is the pile of stones and the pillar that I have set between me and you." Laban said to Jacob, "This pile of stones and the pillar are reminders that I will not pass beyond this pile to come to harm you, and that you will not pass beyond this pile and this pillar to come to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Noah, the gods of our father, judge between us." Jacob took an oath by a God whom his father Isaac feared. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and invited his relatives to eat a meal. They ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and daughters goodbye and blessed them. Laban left and returned home. Thankfully, they were able to part ways on reasonably good terms. And that seems like a good place to stop for right now. I record these videos very late at night, and I'm exhausted.